acted unlawfully.
Now,
And these
these
are the
what?
principles.
Let me just interrupt you here for just a second. You're talking about these bar attorneys, being and opposing and part of the identity theft against the indigenous people here, but they've also these bar attorneys of the 13th Amendment, the real 13th Amendment, which put teeth in those titles of nobility that you mentioned earlier. It disappeared somehow. And these bar attorneys have basically infiltrated all three branches of government: the Congress, the White House, and everything else. Are there these bar attorneys? Are they our real enemy? I mean, is England our real enemy? Are we still working under English feudal
Well,
law?
there's a misprision of perjury that's set off anytime you find an attorney that steps outside of citing a lawful thing. An attorney's supposed to be dealing with law, and what happens is that they step outside of that and they become involved in political negotiations, which we found in the Central Plains tribes, where the lawyers actually are doing social, economic negotiations, and they're not acting within the judicial branch of government. They're acting contrary to their own canons and
Art,
ethics.
Art, are you fondling your telephone there or microphone or something? Where's that coming from? Hello.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Did we lose Art? What happened there? I don't know.
Might have. So what happens is that the many words and abstractions, these are basic principles. Lord Rothschild said this: we'll keep everything abstract. We'll keep it simple. This will confuse the masses of people, and they will have to come to us, and we will have our experts look after our vested interests. Essentially, what happens is the elite, the inner circle as it's known, the deciders, create and control the problem under risk management, and then they come around and offer their solutions to the problem. So it's problem, reaction, solutions.
The Hegelian dialectic.
Right.
Okay.
So as we go, we're starting to see constantly in indigenous country is that people are evicted through all kinds of legal mechanisms, such as tax deeds and so forth. And the treaties stand as such. They're covenants. And as the agreements went forward, the IRA system, tribal governments overplayed and overstepped the treaties with agreements and accords and particular arrangements. And those instruments were inappropriate to abrogate a treaty. So basically, the collaborators just got in and said, well, in the interest of society and economic development, we'll preempt the settled law of indigenous people. These settled laws that I'm talking about in indigenous people's dominion are real. They are in the words and principles stated by the hereditary chiefs and headmen who have diplomatic class standing. And the authorities of the agencies do not. So a lot of the indigenous elders that should have been listened to, carefully listened to, not heard, not at a public meeting as advisors, but carefully listened to as principles and mores, were set aside. And now the recompense is at hand. The distance between a tribal government and a people, a community, is white papered over in PR campaigns. And I assure you that when you look at visiting an Indian reservation, that the promotional things you'll see is in Glacier National Park have nothing to do with the indigenous people's real life. and we're well documented in all these areas with videos and interviews throughout the western United States. There's a large PR such as similar to the casino cultures. The casino cultures, the house always wins. And the casino cultures are going to fall apart and are falling apart. And they're trying to become family friendly and mutate into a new form of management. And these management corporations are no longer just local folks, family-friendly folks. They are international organizations.
Hey, William, I say something more to that. When you talked about earlier about the monetary system, changing our people from the values of which we had for the nature, the land, animal, air, and the water, and the resources that we had used that and lived with, is that the monetary system changing to the dollar. Most of the people now that I noticed, the traditionals, they still are connected to the value of nature and the resources and the use of the land the way we had in the beginning. But there's a majority of them now that have been left in between, to where they're watching everybody move forward, and now the next generations of original people are starting to try to use the dollar as a value system, and they really don't have a conception of that kind of value at all, because it's not long term, it's just immediate. And by the immediacy, once they get money for something that they thought somebody was paying them for wrongdoing, that they weren't paying it for the sale of something, once they give it up, then they look back and say, what else do I get? What else do I get? Because I got more coming. But it's not so. And then in this case, when we're talking about the original people's voice and being able to have the say of where it is we're going, and to absorb what it is that we're what's happening to us, so that we can have a final decision made for all of us. The one thing keeps coming back to me: none of us has ever kept on the subject of the land, animal, air, water rights. They were here before us. Why aren't their rights being put back before we start discussing how we're going to continue to live? We can't live without nature being in its order in which it was put there in the beginning.
One of the problems here, though, are
not such as the buffalo. The buffalo got taken out, and he's wondering how come he's not being brought back when he wasn't the problem of what was coming into our country. He was helping. He was doing his job. Now, the indigenous people didn't get wiped off the earth just because the buffalo got wiped off. The indigenous people didn't. So now the objective of why they took the buffalo away, why isn't the buffalo returned? Why isn't the environmental concern about putting back something that the Creator had put on the earth to continue the cycle of all the life that continues in these places where the buffalo lives? This is my concern for the animal, because they're never being spoken for. And once they're put back, our problems will be least amount, become less, because now we can take care of ourselves through the order in which we were in the beginning given.
These one-worlders have infiltrated almost all of the organizations that are supposedly animal-friendly, the Sierra Club and all this. These are all part of the communist, one-world government order and control of the wild lands. They don't want the buffalo back because they don't control it. They don't, you don't have the farmers and the ranchers making the money off of them.
Let me follow Art's words with this.
Go ahead, sir.
These beings, these natural beings, are part of the indigenous sacred estate held in the land. What has been going on with the buffalo is incredibly important in terms of theft and fraud. The buffalo are part of the sacred estate. This natural asset belonged to everybody, the indigenous people. There's no question that getting rid of the buffalo was a genocidal operation. It was an interdiction program, military spawned by Sheridan. So in that, the conversion of buffalo to a corporate asset, such as belonging to a tribal government enterprise, is likewise a theft. And the reason is that we are seeing in the evidence that the GMO buffalo have been brought on the line. They're modifying them, and with that comes patent rights and so forth assigned to various corporations. The nonprofit system of environmental groups and so forth has advanced from community stakeholders and grassroots movement to private government organizations under stewardship contracting. We see looking good buffalo recovery demonstration projects and so forth. So we're particularly looking at the DNA manipulations, what is going on with the hybridization of the buffalo. There's various lunatic ideas that the buffalo need to be wiped out, and because their immunity to particular problems. The biggest problem that buffalo have right now is the GMO scientists and the DNA manipulation, and we're following that very carefully. The attachment of people, as Art has said, is real. The manipulations we see are all in treating the quality of life as a product of the state. In other words, our evidence shows that the tribal authorities, the county authorities, the city authorities, the state and federal authorities actually rationalize that the quality of life is income, monetary income. Now follow this carefully. The value of the money you can call gold gold, but the value of it is really, the money is really what is being manipulated. And the same value of those natural assets, the buffalo are there, and say we deflate the value of them. We treat them like money. And pretty soon the money's worthless, and then at the right moment we get you under austerity to give up all your buffalo to us, and they become our corporate GMO property. And after we get rid of your property interest in it, which is a personal property interest, it is not a real estate interest. That means that every indigenous individual person has a right to that buffalo as part of their sacred estate. But the corporate mentality says, well, we're going to turn this into an asset, a corporate asset, and it becomes a debt collateral. And under the cap and trade scenario, under the ecosystem services, there's trillions being made by the so-called non-profit organizations, and they're tax exempt for now. So we're coming. My notice to the non-profits is you're going to be looking at tax down the road. Count on it.
Everything that you've talked about, you know, I consider my personal problem here. I have a problem with the whole New World Order, the corporate fascist style of government and the communist style of government. I don't think there's much difference between National Socialism and communism. But how do we change this? Now, I would like to live in a liberty village run by someone with experience in living close to nature. I would like that, and I'd like to be able to share that with the people. I also figured that if you can set up a farm or ranch, the foundation of every civilization, the self-sufficient family farm, you can staff it, you can protect it, and you can grow your own food and generate your own energy from the sun and the wind. With the technology we have today, you don't really need the government, the corporate interest, the international corporations for nothing. I mean, why do we have to sell the top of that mountain to an international corporation to put windmills on it so they can sell the electricity back to us? Why don't we just put a windmill on everybody's home or everybody's teepee? Why not?
The nature of national socialism fashion, or now what has become collaborative governance, is that they keep you hooked up to the smart grid, the smart meters, and so forth. The rate is arbitrary. They can turn on and off the switch on foreclosures. They can up and lower the rate according to the public outcry. But the one thing they do is they keep everybody on the matrix grid. And to me, that's contrary to the national security interest, because if you put all your eggs in one basket, then you can see the rolling blackout phenomena takes place, even if it's merely a predatory economic scheme. And so we have to back up and say, okay, how do you get out of this? The first order would be what you call an order of a state, and that is you develop and you adopt principles. And we've done that in the Declaration by Indigenous people. And that works, but people have to look at it and look at it carefully. As auditors, and Art is the Master Auditor for Indigenous Affairs, and I am the Directorate for Infraspect. So what happens is we have to go in and detect problems and dysfunctions and wrongdoings by individuals, and that's what we do. At some point, somebody will say, well, how do you get out of this? Well, we have that. First is a good way of auditing and determining what the community problem is, and we're very comprehensive on it. Then we move from there to, here's what we see that might be able to help you in your principles. When I talk with Indigenous people, and Art has seen this, such as in a Blackfeet person's interview, the man respectfully spoke for 20-25 minutes. Now, as a English-speaking person, I said, now I'm going to translate, and I do not speak Blackfeet. So I did, and he looked at me and he said, you're right. You just said, you listened, and you said what I was talking about. What is missing from the collaborative governance mentality, the secular mentality, is that they don't listen to everybody. They look at quality of life as a product of their endeavors, and they enfranchise people that are seated at the table. So when you create a community, what kind of community is that? Is it going to be a community of force, capstone doctrine, where you serve the prerogatives of the leaders? That's what's going on in Congress. All they're doing is running around and adopting their prerogatives from the UN level to the state legislative level. That's why people are coming directly in the face of their once representatives, because they comprehend that those people no longer represent their will. That means that their disobedience, their civil disobedience, is justified. And whether it's an Indian country or your community or at a national level or a world level, people are wising up to the very predatory nature, such as we have to depopulate the world. And we can go into that in great detail. Now, part of the identity theft that we're looking into in Indigenous country and documenting is eugenics. And it's got a long history.
Eugenics, the culling of the population. Right?
You know, we attempt to keep a sense of humor and a good centered sense of our spiritual things, and Art is very careful to make sure that we address things from this Indigenous spiritual practices as well. And I count the ammunition, and we work well in this, but we know this, that we have to detect what is wrong, and then from that we make our recommendations to communities on what to do about it. We're trusted and well liked in a lot of different quarters because we are not coming in with an attitude, and we're not coming in with an agenda that's attached to some secular ideology. The things we speak of and the things we understand and comprehend fit everyone's views. So we have to look at courage, because that is part of it. One of the things people say we inspire is courage, and we've had to get right in people's face before and say, well, why weren't you at the meeting? And the woman says, well, she had to go to bingo. Now that is a problem that every community is facing right now, and we find a pattern. First, the community is starved under austerity, and then they're fed options. This is old. This happened to Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull family. They threw him in the stockade and then made him sign the treaties, signed the paper. This is going on today on all of the reservations. They are starving them out through austerity, and it's not necessarily the fault of the tribal authorities. And if someone's going to pick on the tribal authorities and say they're corrupt, especially if it's coming from a state or federal legislator, you need to look at that state and that federal legislative involvement. There is no bad BIA. The BIA had partners. Those partners were states, counties, cities, and municipals and private contractors. And they lead right back to the local county commission's doorstep. So it is very careful in how we see things, and we see that there were people in the BIA that were doing a good job and trying to do right. However, there was people in the state and local corporate subdivision interests that certainly have their agenda. And we see not only the theft of the identity, but we always see the fraud, the fraudulent conversion of assets. We always see that somebody's got to gain, the banks right at the head of it. And the banking institutions in Indian country are still using the corrupted currency called the dollar. And when they settle in these settlements, they use a corrupted low-value dollar to pay out the distributions to the Indian people, the enrolled members. And then when all the assets are taken away, I assure you the asset value will go way up under the new currency or the new exchange rate. And that's what's going on in these settlements. There's always one other factor that we watch carefully, and that is this. The lawyers are always building in omnibus immunity and indemnification clauses. That means that they're making sure that the appropriate individuals and the appropriate entities are immunized from prosecution for criminal and civil wrongdoing, and are not subject to civil litigation. That is part of the class action corruption. And we assure you that we're not just talking here, that we can back up what we say, and that's why Art and I work together on this.
Now, I've said that, you know, this whole national NDAA or whatever it is, that they just passed. 93 congressmen voted to allow the military to suspend posse comitatus and to pick up any dissidents without criminal charges and hold them. Is this the final nail in the coffin for anybody that wants to still be free?
So, Art, do you want to respond to that one?
I think that's pretty deep. You ought to go ahead.
Okay. Essentially, first of all, at the center of all of this is right of discovery, right of conquest, manifest destiny, and eminent domain. The capstone doctrine is the, say if you want to call it the police state, go ahead, call it that. But it is the combination of the military force and so forth with the civil authorities, and this has been around a long time. The authorities that are very insecure and trying to stabilize their respective powers are just perfecting their doctrines. The Reauthorization Act is merely perfecting the loopholes, kind of closing in on the loopholes of maintaining authority. Now, there's reasons, there's legitimate reasons for this as well, because certainly in creating the problem, the United States I call them neo-libcons, they created a lot of problems with immigration and so forth, and it was purposeful. They had a secular purpose for that. And now it's come back in blowback, and the blowback is that the authorities are having to tighten down on these homeland security things. The biggest problem is this. The United States people are still suffering under the delusion that the war on terror is a war. It is not a war. It is about the state of mind. The reason it evolved from terrorist and terrorism to terror was to take it to a state of mind. In other words, you're being prosecuted under a state of mind, and the ADL can be thanked for pushing this forward under thought potentiality.
I have referred to the war on terror as a war against anybody anywhere in the world that doesn't want to go along with one world banking. Is that would you say that was accurate?
Well, in a country that literally has bailed out the bankers instead of letting them fail, that in itself to me is sedition and treason, and that issue is being put forward in the assembly of the people called Occupy America. The legislators and congressmen certainly are offline. You can just call them flatline for now. The people that are coming forward in their communities know exactly what will happen and what remedy will have to be taken. The police forces are split. The military forces are split, and as I said, they're split everywhere. And if you're going to look at this jihad, what you're seeing is not a police state item per se. This is a religious jihad, and it's under the capstone doctrine. And the real essence is they make decisions based on a doctrine known as consensus reality. That means that basically the group gets together and believes something. It doesn't have to be reality. They just perceive that they want a consensus out of it. Now, the warfares are all structured conflicts and controlled oppositions. And that's the way it has been for many, many, many hundreds and thousands of years. To stop this, it is simplistic to say this, but it can be said. Don't play the game. Don't play the game theory.
Come out of her. Come out of her is what the way the Bible put it. All right, we're almost out of time here. William Blair, Art George, thank you for being on my show. And any way I can help and work with you, I'll be glad to do that.
Thank you, Clay. Go ahead.
Thank you on behalf of the Indigenous people that we work with, because they entrust us with speaking for them and articulating things that not necessarily can be put into English. Art?
Yeah, and also, Clay, it would be good if there's others out there that once we leave the show, if they're interested in going on more and wanting to know more, we can go there, or we can do this on the phone, or however it can be done. But the information that we are constantly coming to us, the people need to know. So,
all right, we'll have links up there to Introspect and any other information we can get out and pass on. I'll be glad to do that.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Call recording has been completed.